Damn, that's fabulous.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jay Tahoe here, and today's video is going to be about what to look for when buying an older vehicle with high miles.
All right, guys, good morning. So this is my 2000 Chevy Tahoe. I bought this one from a neighbor who was selling it for $1,400. It does have 240,000 miles on the motor. Runs and drives great. I mean, and yes, it's got a couple of cosmetic scrapes and dings, but for the price I paid for it, you really can't beat it. So I wanted to do a video about what to look for, when buying an older vehicle where the miles are up there, and what you can really expect, because I've had a lot of older vehicles, okay? Right now, this is my daily driver, and I know it sucks because gas is going up, and, it just gets about, 10 miles per gallon on a good day, but it's the Chevy 5.3 V8, and I love it, so I won't be getting rid of it anytime soon. But yeah, so the first thing to consider, right, is that when somebody goes to sell a car, there's a reason for it. And most of the time that reason is because things are starting to go and they just want to get rid of it and make it someone else's headache. However, there are some people, who could get more for the car, but they want to let it go, right? Such as like an elderly person who got a new vehicle and, has a vehicle just laying around, and sometimes they'll let it go for, a little less than it's actually worth because, they just want it gone out of the driveway. This one, for example, my neighbor was selling it, and he was going to give it to his son, but his son, didn't want it, to drive back and forth to college, because it didn't get good gas mileage. So, he let it go. He was asking $1,800, and I, got him to negotiate a little bit down to $1,400. So you want to consider a person's motive for selling a car. Are they just trying to get rid of it because it has problems? And if so, are the problems minor and, easily fixable? Or, is the transmission about to blow? Does the engine have a cracked head gasket? Is the car not going to be, running in 6 months? So we're going to look at a couple of things today, to consider before plunking the money down, because you can't, if you're like me and you live pretty frugally, right, and you don't want the financial burden. And listen, I've had two cars that I paid off, but I prefer, to drive, older vehicles, and rather than, having one, nice car, I'd rather have, two or three older vehicles to use, and if they're reliable. So, the first thing you want to look at, of course, is the condition of the vehicle. I mean, if you're looking at something for $2,000, $3,000 or less, obviously it's not going to be perfect, right? You're going to have, some scrapes and dings on the car. You can't be too picky with that stuff when it comes to the price. Like, yeah, you can see here, like this one got clipped by something here. I don't know what. Next thing I'd look at is the tires. If you buy an inexpensive vehicle, most of the times they're going to be sold as is. So be prepared to shell out, $300-400 for some new tires, or at least, some gently used tires. For example, like I have a little balding on my front tires here. These are the tires he sold to me with, but I did replace the drive wheel tires with these General Grabbers. These are in pretty good shape. I paid $300 to replace these in the rear. So, just look at the tires, make sure they're, see if they're bald. Take a coin, see if you can put it in the treads. Because depending on what state you live in, you may have problems passing inspection based on that. So just make sure you give the tires, a good look over, right? Next thing you want to do is actually fire the car up. Check out this, and you can see the interior. This is the leather interior. This one actually has the third row too, which is pretty nice. What I love about these older, you don't see a lot of this anymore either, is that they have the column shifter these days. So, but you want to turn it on, right, and make sure that you're not getting any type of rough idle, and that the engine runs okay. You want to make sure that it sounds normal. Make sure that the oil pressure gauge is normal. Obviously, so mileage is a factor, right? We know that, like, cars generally as a rule of thumb, cars start to have problems and significantly depreciate in value around 100,000 miles. However, some cars will last and run for way over that. For example, this one has nearly 250,000 miles on it. When I was growing up, my father had a Volvo that had well over 300,000 miles on it. So if well maintained, cars can run for a long time depending on the motor. But these Chevy V8s actually were known for having pretty good life. Check your RPMs and make sure it's consistent, that it's not fluctuating, that it idles okay, right? You also, if you can, if they still have plates on it, take it for a drive and make sure that the transmission shifts okay. I would test your e-brake too. This one, I tested this when I got it. The e-brake, I think the cable snapped and I have to replace it at some point. But yeah, it just goes straight to the floor. Like if I were to drive, it wouldn't even do anything. See how easy that released? The cable definitely snapped on this. Okay, next thing to do, you definitely want to pop the hood. A couple of things to look for under the hood, and I do apologize, it looks like my neighbors are doing some type of landscaping this morning. So when you pop the hood, check for corrosion on the battery terminals. That's nothing, that's something you can clean up easily, but you do want to make sure you're not going to have any problems. Make sure the terminals are on snug. GM uses these weird side terminals. Actually, one of the bolts snapped, so I just put a new one on there because that can cause connection problems. Another thing to check is the condition of your serpentine belt. Make sure it's not like ribbed and everything and it looks smooth, and that it's got all the ridges. Yeah, you want to make sure that the serpentine belt's got the ridges and you can feel them with your thumb. But if you can pop the air filter, just make sure that's an easy, $10, air filter. If the air filter is dirty, make sure the intake isn't dirty. Check that there's, fluid in the reservoirs. You've got coolant. I would recommend check the oil, check the transmission fluid dipstick too, just to make sure that those fluids are up to par. You don't want a vehicle that was running with, without properly maintained oil and transmission fluid. If you can see where the spark plugs are, check the condition of those wires and everything. That's important. If you have a misfire, you'll know it. I mean, the check engine light will flash. Another thing I would say too is you want to check like the amount of room you have to work. If something on the pulley system here were to go bad, right? Like the alternator or the water pump, or the compressor clutch, anything on the pulley system here. Check how much room you have, to replace something like that, because that'll actually, if you're mechanically inclined, and I do recommend if you're gonna buy something older, I do recommend a little, being a little mechanical aptitude. However, if you're going to have it serviced, keep in mind that like the amount of pain in the ass that a repair is to do is gonna affect the labor cost. So for example, for me with this block here, this doesn't look too bad. I'm probably gonna have to move the fan here. I'm probably gonna have to unbolt this and move the fan to get to stuff and remove part of the intake there to get to the stuff on the pulley system here, except for the alternator, which is right here. So if the alternator goes, which is a common thing, that doesn't look too bad. So I mean, obviously you'd have to release the belt tensioner and release the belt, but that's not hard. They make a tool you can rent at AutoZone for that. Anyway, that's enough of my rant with of under the hood. Make sure too that you check, and this differs by state. Make sure you see when the last inspection was. Try to ask them when the last oil change and transmission fluid change was, if they know. Because the thing, I don't recommend a vehicle that's been sitting. You want something that, somebody has been driving and is just getting rid of due to circumstance. If it's just been sitting, there's a chance, the gas will go bad, right? You may have to drain, bad fluid. You may have to drain bad fluid out. You may have to flush the oil out of the crankcase too, out of the system, because bad oil basically solidifies and becomes sludge, and then the thing's just going to run like crap and you're not going to, get good life out of it. Okay, so you want to check The last thing I would check is under the vehicle. A couple of key points to look at under here. You want to make sure that there's rust, not rot. Older vehicles, especially here in New York where we get snow, you're gonna see rust, which is fine. You don't want rot. If anything looks crumbled, or you can, or it'll go when you start poking at it, that's rot, not rust. Check, the muffler and the catalytic converter. If you can reach it, and I can't quite reach it here, if you can grab the drive shaft, just grab your shaft, buddy boy. It was, and there's a little play in it. You can see that the U-joint is probably starting to go. I mean, that's a pretty easy repair. I've done it myself, but if you pay for a mechanic to do it, it can get up there. Check your differential, the transfer case and transmission, right? And well, if it's a front wheel drive car, there isn't going to be a rear differential. But to check the transmission, right? Make sure that there's no leaks, because that can be expensive to replace. Check the condition of the springs, right? Make sure that that it's not, the car isn't, lopsided to one side. So you don't want to have to replace. I mean, shocks and struts aren't the hardest thing in the world to replace. But again, like if you have a little mechanical aptitude, these are things you can easily do yourself. I'd recommend, like, honestly, I love a good beater because it teaches you how to become mechanically adept. I learned a lot of the repairs that I know how to do. I was taught by a couple of friends, and a lot of it came because we had these crappy beater cars, and YouTube is also a infinite source of knowledge these days. So keep that in mind. Great cars that you can get for cheap. You can get older Crown Victorias, V8s. You can get a Crown Vic for under $1,000 these days. I don't know if I recommend. They have tons of them at police auctions. I don't know if I recommend buying a police vehicle if you plan to have it for a long time, because you do have to consider those cars were beaten on mercilessly. You can get 90s to early 2000s Ford Explorers, with just a little over 100,000 miles. Those go for $2,000-$3,000. These Tahoes, I got a good deal on this one. I've seen a couple, in like the $3,000 range, and keep in mind these were, at one point this was like a $35,000-$40,000 truck. So, I thought this was a pretty good bang for my buck. I mean, I paid $1,400 for it, and I've done some minor repairs totaling probably less than $500, and I've had it for about a year and a half now. So, you can get a good bang for your buck, buying an older vehicle. So just keep that in mind, guys. I hope this video was helpful, and leave any questions you have in the comments section, and I will see you guys soon.